Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom around meditation to the community. I'd love to hear some about what it is that you each do and how you started collaborating and what that looks like.
For me, the daily parts meditation practice, I think I'll just say evolved organically in my own healing process and have found that it's similar within my clients as well. So for me, it's really getting to know and continue um, facilitating those self-to-part relationships and really getting to know all those aspects or all those parts of us in a deeply connective way. And for me, I will say along my spiritual practice, IFS has felt like one form of awakening. So this meditation practice has just been like, with each unblending and each unburdening has been an awakening. And that meditation has really helped facilitate my parts, trusting myself. And I find that with clients as well. So I feel like I can go on forever about that, but I think that's a good beginning point, and we'll see how Adrienne dovetails in with this because it dovetails very nicely.
Yeah. And that's always been the joy of working together with Michelle, is that there's always like a really organic flow together. So with that being said, I also have developed a lot of my practices through my own journey and doing that as a dance movement therapist and also as a meditation teacher in traditionally Buddhist and Tantric lineages. And seeing IFS and how to work with our system through those practices and really delving into what that looks like on a somatic level, what that looks like on a spiritual level, and really taking in like the whole system and how the embodiment of our system can happen both inside and in the larger spiritual world. So I've enjoyed kind of seeing how those traditional practices overlap with parts work and parts work meditations, and also how they're different and how they're similar, and how they can also be really embodied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lovely
Uh,
process to feel, and it's also lovely to witness with others.
Would you say that meditation is a really important aspect of doing parts work in general?
I find that it's pretty critical to one thing that I think it helps a lot with is that developing trust of our parts to give us that separation, that space, and having that meditation time, depending on the meditations, can really help facilitate that process of unblending. And then, yeah, as each part unblends, it is a layer of awakening. So it really helps not only each part to know who we are, but they can feel who self is, and then they know who they are as well. It's a multifaceted process, but yes.
Hmm.
yeah, and I would fully agree with that. So much of it is taking it off the couch and also off the cushion. And being able to do that, I feel like I need to practice it in my everyday meditation. So I can bring that meditation into my everyday life. And so being able to have it embodied takes practice. And it can also be really joyful. So sometimes when I've heard practice or other folks have heard practice, it's like, oh, there's more work. We have parts that are like, oh, not more work. And it just becomes an embodied way of being that's actually quite pleasant and can be joyful. And it can also be challenging and healing and all of the things. But it becomes a way of living for me and for many others. It
Yes,
also becomes more effortless over time.
fully agree with all of that. Yes. I will say for me, it's been an evolving process. I began pretty much as an atheist in the early days of my healing, and IFS has really helped um, me feel a deep spiritual connection to something greater, and that comes directly from the unblending and unburdening process for me, and the healing process that IFS has done. So, um, it's been a daily practice for me. Once at a certain point along my journey, I'll say it became a daily practice for me to connect in with my parts, and for my parts to really get to know one another, but also certainly me, and that felt very, I would say, deeply impactful on a spiritual level, which surprised those atheist parts of me at a certain point. But I can just say it's a journey, and not everyone feels that same way. And I do want to know, or want people to know that all parts are welcome in that, so there's not an expectation around that.
Yeah, I think the way that I've related to it being a spiritual journey, originally I grew up as like a very much a cultural Jew, and practicing the culture and that religion, and it was part of how I grew up, and it was more around rituals. And I found throughout the time that I've been in my own journey and having to look at higher power and what that means in a recovery journey, it really challenged me to kind of look at what it means to be bigger than our body. What is bigger than us? And so at first, it was very much like, oh, well, I can get with nature, like that I can get on board with. And that being sort of like the first step. And then really realizing that dance had been a practice for me, movement had been a practice for me since I was young, and that embodiment was also a way of feeling into how our bodies are both in our body and also the energy that's around our body. And so then that overlap with a lot of my Buddhist meditation practices, becoming a meditation instructor, and really being able to feel how those practices overlapped with embodiment practices. And so it really brought out all of these elements of how to both be with myself internally and then also how to be with a larger sense of self. And then once I found IFS, it just totally blossomed into even deeper awarenesses of parts internally and even more profound aspects of what is outside of us, and more connection to shamanic practices, tantric practices, the cosmos, source, however you know it, very broadly. And then it's so open. It's so open. It doesn't mean any one thing. And how relieving and how cool that is. And I can still enjoy my Jewish rituals with a lot more profoundness and richness in addition to it all. Yeah.
Mm, that's
Hmm.
lovely, and that just makes me think of the natural multiplicity we have inside, and when we get to know each of our parts intimately, each part has a different way of expressing that spirituality, at least in my system. And I know a client in particular who has said the same thing. But when we connect with each of our parts and let them express their spirituality as well in different ways, it's a nice way to just honor the whole system.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, because so many, a lot of the parts that I've noticed they're nonverbal. Like some of my, system has been nonverbal, and to be able to be with them embodied and be with them in a way that doesn't require thought or image, or, it's been very relieving to just, spend time with the embodiment of the our profound body being human. And then how, yeah, how profound that can be, how rich that can be. And noticing that there's different ways that parts want to connect with spirituality. Some of them want to connect in that really somatic way for me. And then other parts are like, going towards guides or nature, or, yeah, different. I very much relate to that, but like different parts relate spiritually in different ways. Yeah.
Anything else either of you would like to share on this subject?
I think the one thing that comes to mind is that I think we discovered just now that Michelle and I also have an interest in noticing the self that is within the parts and the gifts that our parts have. And that's a really interesting connection that I just love and am sort of fascinated with. And I think Michelle might agree with that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's a wonderful place to for our parts to get to feel their own selves as well. Um, there's such a real deepening into that felt sense when our parts can feel their own selves as well, in addition to, the system self. So that's been nice. The other thing I was going to say is, Adrienne a few minutes ago mentioned taking it off the couch and taking our meditation off the couch and having a daily interaction with that. I think as we do this parts work or parts focused meditation, we can find over time that becomes easier and easier. So for me, I'm able to, people might think it's weird to do little bits of meditation while driving or while in the grocery store. My daily practice is walking through my arboretum every day. Half the time my eyes are closed, and but taking that into our daily practice or daily lives is really, I think, important for our parts to know that they can connect with us at any point, and we can be in that meditative state with them, no matter where we're at. We might have to pull over sometimes, but
Absolutely. Yeah, I love having flash practices like that. And yeah, being able to incorporate it just somatically throughout the day too. Just being able to check in with the body and where parts are showing up, especially in relation to others. Like so many times that's my window of, just noticing the body and what's happening in the body, and then being able to respond to others in my everyday life. So really taking it into the world in so many different ways. Yeah.
Thank you both so much. I'm really inspired by this conversation, and I know others will be too.
thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Jen.